Hello, everybody. It's Grace, author of Grace Notes and these Eating Peace videos. So, welcome to Eating Peace this week. Thinking about a topic or a personality, really, that I see appear quite often with interest in understanding their own behavior around eating is somebody who is extremely kind, very empathetic, almost wants to hold the world, the weight of the world on their shoulders and be extremely giving and generous and friendly and mothering even. And this kind of personality, somebody who perhaps has studied their own eating issues for years, they might be like a nutritional expert. They might have a job as a nurse or some kind of healing practitioner. They have a very deep generosity and interest in supporting other people, helping, healing. And often these people notice to the detriment of their own lives. They see this kind of activity or behavior or belief around what is required or what's needed. There's a need over here with this person, and there's sort of an almost natural movement towards the one who needs help. Like I said, a very mothering quality. I certainly have experienced that. And but some people have that as the overarching, personality or approach towards those in their lives. And then they don't take care of themselves to the detriment of the care for the self. Some people really, really find this to be extremely difficult. Often that relationship between themselves and others and noticing the hurting in the world or the suffering is very painful. You see the other people who are hurting and it seems just so painful. Often somebody who's having this kind of troubling experience around other people's suffering, the eating behavior might not be, it's interesting, full-fledged angry like binging. Sometimes it is. But I've noticed it more with people. They're not necessarily so drawn to self-starvation or really swinging wildly in their moods and their relationship with food and eating. Just maybe a constant sense of movement towards food and kind of needing a little more to sustain them, to keep their energy up, to keep them able to help others and be with others. And so, typically that person is heavy set and not necessarily completely familiar with it being enraged and not necessarily super isolating. So I just thought it was worth mentioning. Even though all these characteristics are within every human being, of course, there's just tendencies that we seem to have in our personalities. So, typical human reaction to being threatened, fight or flight. We've all heard that for years. Fight, flight, or freeze. So fighting, the fighting one is angry, furious, enraged, wanting to attack, very judgmental. Just this natural human tendency to do that without questioning their thoughts, of course. And maybe thought is the thing that comes strongly out, and then just action that is against what they're seeing, in relationship to other people. And this might be something that person who has an angry reaction notices from way back. They started to feel really angry and furious and defiant when they were teenagers. Like I said, everyone can remember all parts of these, and you might have bounced between all of them. I certainly can remember pictures of myself feeling like that, as well as the first way I just described, which is more, bleeding heart or feel desperately wanting that person to feel better, which is, of course, very different than angry and attacking. And then, so that's fight. Flight, and maybe even freezing, petrified. But flight is more like isolating, pulling the covers right over your head and getting in bed, backing into a closet and hiding, really making yourself very, very protected from the outside world, maybe not sharing closely with a lot of people, not being super honest, certainly feeling very isolated when it comes to honesty and contact and relationships, and maybe even only a little bit will trigger you. Just having a little bit of somebody over there crying or being upset will cause a sense of being triggered and wanting to fly away and get away from that flight. Sometimes people that come that have a lot of an isolating tendency, a real need to self-protect and kind of be in their own little world, because it's safer. It's like then their best friend is food, and they're eating food as a deep comfort, and maybe nobody else is food is silent, you consume it and take it in, and just, it's soothing and grounding for some, and it never talks back, except for in your body. It begins to really talk back when you're overusing it, you've done too much with it. But that flight or freeze type of attitude and experience, is very different from the attacking one. Kind of like two sides of the same coin, though, perhaps. Both very stressful. So, in a way, the very first thing I mentioned, that extremely empathetic, reaching out because somebody's suffering, is sort of a different mechanism, although it could be similar to the same. We're seeing something that we don't like, and then there's this tendency to move towards it and forget about this self. I just find it's a little bit of a different way or a different angle that some people have very strongly who are overeaters that tends to kind of run life. The glasses that we have on with this really being able to relate to other people's suffering and want to help, and have a lot of a sense of sympathy, or even like upholding it as you're a very good citizen and you really are well-meaning and well-intentioned. It's a little bit different than the isolating reaction or the fighting reaction. But often, when I have felt that way in my life, there's very, very unfinished business about this suffering. It's almost as if attacking or feeling angry, we're just going to bury that in the ground and never, ever do it. You could have there's a wisdom to it might not lead to anything good to be that angry. And then also, isolating doesn't feel right. It feels like sort of too fear-oriented, like I'm not doing something to be out there helping the world. But something still gets really left behind when you're reaching out and want to caretake, make sure people feel good, rush to that all the time, and then notice lots of eating that happens when you have a need for that. When you really, it's almost like here comes the stressful beliefs are, I need other people to feel better. I really do need them to feel better. We can get that way with our children and our parents and everybody that we know in our lives, and even perfect strangers. I need them to feel better. And we'll just think, of course I must do that 100% and forget about myself. That's where the tricky part lies. Because there you are needing all that food to help sustain this incredible caring and outflow of energy going out. But what an incredible thing. I need to help them. I need them to feel better. I need to fix them. I need to heal them. I need to, work with them, be open to them. Great moment, great concept, great story for inquiry, because it's stressful. And anything that is stressful like that is worth inquiring into in a deep way. Is that true? Question number one. Is that true that I need to rush in to help? That person needs my help? That they are going to be too upset, worst case scenario. These horrible things that people do in their lives, when they run away or attack or even self-harm. I need to help them not do that. Is that true? I find if I really sit with that answer honestly, it just has to be no, because it's not even possible for me to help everyone. I can help some, but at the expense of my own self, like if I'm just feeling anxious and freaked out about that, they're suffering. Can I absolutely know it's true? I need to help them with all that panic and fear involved? No. How do I react when I believe that thought? Even if you said yes, even if your answer is yes, I need to help them. How do you react when you believe that thought, I need to help them? I mean, you bend over backwards, you tie yourself up into a pretzel. You'll do anything. You find yourself traveling across the country to help people, or staying up at all hours, but there's a sense of unrest beneath it all. This has to be another way. Healing must occur. This is terrible. The suffering is so immense. I can't stand it. I can't handle it. I must be engaged. And it doesn't mean to do this work would result in you stopping being of assistance or support. But what an incredible thing to step into question 4, which is, who would you be without this story? The stressful story of, I must help people. I have to heal them. Like with fear involved. Who would you be without that thought? I find it's very interesting. Sort of a weird paradox might happen. I might find that I'm just naturally interested in being with people, working with people. I mean, in my job, that's what I do. I am there with them, but it's very much as equals. I'm very much trusting whatever their process is just right for them. And we're just here as friends in inquiry together. Who knows where it's going or what the right answer is? I sure don't have it. There's also something very restful if I don't believe the thought I have to help them, and exciting with a capacity to say no if I'm not the right one. I remember long ago working with somebody who had tremendous amount of difficulty, and I just knew sitting in his presence that I wasn't the person that could help the most, and he even probably needed, which is extremely rare for me to think, but in this case, anti-anxiety medication, and this is just my idea, my thought, and kind of a really deep, ongoing sort of relationship. Lots and lots of diagnoses from psychiatrists for mental incapacity and difficulty. And just at the place that I was at that time, I thought, I loved sitting with him and being with him, and I wasn't sure how well I could be or manage with that. Now it might be very different. This is over 10 years later, and having seen this come through my life. But I just knew this is beyond my purview, my realm, what I can help with here. And how wonderful to be able to sit with that, who I'd be without that thought, without that story. That it's not required. I can just feel and sit with for a moment what is requested here, and I can tell if it's a yes or a no. It does not have to be me. I do not have to be the one helping. That is not required. Let's turn it all the way around. I don't have to help that person. I have to help myself. These are two, holding those turnarounds can be very, very meaningful and a different way to live. And you don't have to make it a dramatically gigantic different way to live and quit your job as a nurse, immediately, because I now have to help myself. You can keep doing the thing that is your role, a mother, a caretaker, a giver, without holding that stressful experience that this is a requirement and it absolutely has to happen, and I'm the only one who can do it, that there's no other way or possibility. How can I help myself? What could I open up to if I'm the one who needs some help? And my thinking needs some help in this situation. I also notice too, when I have that sense of openness about giving to myself, I may reach far beyond eating as a supporting, device for what I need to soothe or comfort. I might get really, really interested in what I'm really thinking and believing and taking a look deeply at it. It's much more satisfying, more comforting, maybe I even get in touch with that anger response or the isolation responses that I've had and see what was going on in those moments, that those happened, that that's the way I felt. So without the thought, and just can you imagine? I mean, I have loved the freedom and liberation of being with people, being in their presence, and knowing I do not have to help them. But I'm there because I want to be, in a most interesting, paradoxical, curious way. Like, well, let's see. Let's find out how fun that is. And that I'm getting help myself in the very interaction with somebody else as we inquire and explore and investigate what's true and what isn't, and what this relationship is with food and eating. We're finding out together. Everyone a unique experience. But if you have that, in your life, I mean, it's why I'm bringing that to this eating piece today. People have that who don't necessarily have eating issues. They have the thought that they need to rescue or support or rush in or help. It's their job, my responsibility. Just feeling the weight of the world. We'll say the weight of the world is on that person's shoulders. Weight, the heaviness, the bulk, the weight on my shoulders. What do you feel responsible for that maybe isn't your responsibility? Or you could look at it another way, with a turnaround, and see what is it there. So I don't need any help. I need help. I don't need to help them. I don't need to help that person. I've thought about this, that, as a kind of a living turnaround, a way to be with that. I don't need help from the food. If I just need help from something that is a life force, giving me support, soothing, comfort, awareness. I might not even need soothing if I'm not all mixed up about who needs help or not, and what suffering is and what's going on there. But it's not that I have to say no to food. I just may not even notice that I need it to support me. I notice that I have support in my very environment. I said this before in different kinds of turnarounds, but the support of the floor and the room that I'm in, and gravity on planet Earth, and chairs, and writing, and journaling, and sharing with others, and being in connection and contact with people in a really honest way, and seeing what it is I have resented, and what it is that has terrified me, so that I feel like I need to isolate and close down against them. Where have I felt powerless in my life, or empty, or afraid? Remember those three huge, broad arenas: powerless, no choice, no option; empty, unsatisfied, not getting what I need; or afraid. Where do I have my proof that I've had those experiences in my life? Let's write them down. Identify the moments. And see what it is I was thinking and what I still think about those moments, so I can question them one by one at a time. But what an incredible thing to know that help is not required when it isn't. And that if you are feeling hurt because of your general capacity to help, if you're feeling hurt by that, very important to sit with the subtlety of questioning that and holding it. Doesn't mean that you're going to suddenly stop being a good mom, but maybe some of the things you need to rush in and rescue about, or fix, are not required at all. Maybe it's actually okay that they have those experiences out there of like forgetting their coat when they went to school, and they get to feel what it's like. It's not a life and death experience to be cold, and maybe they'll begin to want to take their coat. Maybe not, too. Maybe it's far less of a problem than you ever dreamed of, and you have imagined they're suffering, and they actually aren't suffering. So who would you be without the story if I have to help somebody? And just see if that's a relief. If that's a relief. I know that when I feel relief, there's far less need to eat to find support and energy. Take care, everybody. Lots of love.